Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Bill Selak Talks. My name is Bill Selak. This is me talking. Now, if you're just listening to the normal podcast, this sounds normal. But if you're watching this on the YouTubes, as my mom calls it, or as the YubTub, as my kids call it, I don't know. Do I go with the older person or the kids? Maybe we call it the YubTub. No, that doesn't, I don't know. Anyway, you see me. Hello, I am here. I am waving at you. We're trying out some video. And so if you're just listening, whatever. But if you want to watch me talk, you can do that also. I'm also going to be sharing my screen a little bit. I'll also be describing what's going on because I'm so super excited about this new series of podcast episodes from my old band, Rising Decline. So why do we have some new songs? Well, we do and we don't. But before we jump into what these new songs are, I want to explain kind of what the next 18 episodes of this podcast are going to be about. So here we go. You ready? Let's do it. We have 9 songs from our 2003-ish album. And that was, we had recorded a bunch of songs. We had some rough mixes, which means like we exported it as an MP3. At the time, we burned it onto a CD. And that was kind of it. And then we stopped being a band. We broke up. It was very sad. But I still had this CD of our rough edits. Didn't get everything just right. Like the drums were a little bit off. The bass was a little bit weird here and there. The vocals needed a little bit of kind of editing and stuff. Like the recording was good, but how the highs, the mids, the lows, the compression, the reverb, all the stuff, how all that worked wasn't where I wanted it to be. And so for now, for 20 years, I've just had these rough mixes. And here's where it's going to get exciting. As I share my screen, you can actually see what I did. And so the main theme of this episode is going to talk about kind of what this project is and show you how it became a new project. And then every other episode, you're just going to hear the song I talk about. Fair enough? So 9 songs, 18 episodes. And so right now, you're going to hear me talk about this, and then you're going to hear the song. Then you'll hear me talk about track 2. Then you'll hear the song, then you'll hear me talk about track 3 and the song, and on till we get to all 18. And so the reason this suddenly is super exciting, and this actually does connect with what I've been talking about with AI and education, which is everywhere. Stem splitter. I need to have like echo on that, but I don't have that set up. Stem splitter, stem splitter, stem splitter. All I need to do is bring an MP3, just a regular stereo file, into the new Logic Pro. And when I right-click on it, I get Stem Splitter. That is the magic. It's a new AI integration. And what it does is it takes this one original stereo track that has everything together, and it splits it into these stems. Dude, it's amazing. So I have a track for vocals, a track for drums, a track for bass, and a track for guitar. This is seriously amazing. And then what you can do is get into your mixer and start to do stuff with it, right? So like I have vocals here, and so I could add a little bit of auto-tune. Not much, just a little bit, just to get it a little bit cleaner. What else I can do? I can EQ the vocals. And so I had done that before in the rough mixes, but I could really come in and bump up the mids, bump up the highs, cut the lows. I can also add more compression to it so that the vocals don't get as loud or as quiet. They just kind of stay in one pocket in the mix. I can load in a preset with Logic Pro that didn't exist in 2003. And then I was actually able to send it to a separate bus, which is a separate track, and that gets you delay. And so you can see, if you're watching the video, I automated the delay in Brent's vocal, and I could do all these things. Whereas if this was just an MP3, it's there, it's a track, it's static and uneditable. And now with the vocals, I have all this other stuff. With the drums, we could do even more. I have so many drum tracks. I had to create kind of a group of them. And same thing. What I did is I was able to come to the drums. I could EQ them so that, keep in mind it's kind of a stereo drums file. So I have like the kick drum, the snare, the cymbals, and just kind of the sizzle, if you will. Will you? The sizzle? Yeah, I've just the sizzle of the drums. And then similarly, I can do other stuff where it compresses it in a particular way, a multi-band compression. And then what's really cool is that I have a plugin, Steven Slate Audio, where I send the drums to a separate track and it's a trigger. And so I didn't get to compress and EQ the original snare drum the way I wanted. And so what I was able to do is bring it into the Steven Slate trigger and say, all right, whenever you have a snare drum, which is about like 200, 300 hertz, whenever you hear that big hit, play this sample. And then similarly with the kick drum, I could come in and be like, all right, whenever you have a low end thing, like anything below 400 hertz, like really low end, really bassy, you're going to give me this kick drum sound. And so then I can mix the kick drum and the snare drum along with the original drums and get kind of the what I would have done if I had had separate tracks all along. But I haven't had that. I haven't had that in a very, very long time. And then the same thing with bass and guitar. I'm able to come in and edit them kind of however I want, which is super, super powerful. So essentially with this update from Logic Pro, I went from an MP3 that I've had for 20 years that's been good, but not amazing. And then I have all these separate tracks and I can mix them separately, get the sound I just want. I can even automate some stuff. And so, you know, if the vocals are too loud in this part, I can bring that down just like you would if you're recording everything from scratch, but did it all from an MP3, which is amazing. Like this did not exist before. This is a new thing. This is an exciting thing. So it's one of those things that should kind of like blow your mind because it's so cool. And that's the thing. Like that's what I actually love about, if we take just a step back, about kind of generative AI. So often we think about it just in terms of, hey, write a 5-paragraph essay for me, and then let's talk about, do we need 5-paragraph essays in school because ChatGPT can do that? And then is that cheating? And it's like, no, time out. Not the point. The point is that these new AI integrations can do really profound things. And so a lot of times we talk about just the writing of it, but what we often don't see is the really, really robust other applications like this, where we're able to take music and do all kinds of stuff that we otherwise couldn't imagine. Now, I've gone on and on and on about how AI can do this and that for education, how it can help with like writing songs, how you can take different photos and do like generative, not even photos, just generative images based on text, right? The text to image photos. But there's so much going on in other ways that's not just write an essay for me or create a silly picture for me. And I think this is one really, really exciting thing. And what I love about this is it takes a lot of the themes of this podcast and puts them together, because I continue to talk about the importance of music and the musician's mindset and how that applies to kind of everything as an adult. If you've not listened for some time, the very basic idea is that the leader I am today in the education space, the type of like adult human I am when it comes to working with other people, is super influenced by the lessons I learned being a professional musician. And so as I look at these tracks, so, you know, like, I'm not going to sing at the level Brent was. I can't play drums anywhere near the level Marco could. I can play bass and guitar. Brent had a different style. Loved what he did play with guitar. But if I'm going to record my own music, I'm going to use like drummer track and be done with it. Like, it's not going to help me like collaborate on writing a thing. I can only do about half of this stuff on my own, and that's just recording, where you can do like all the magic and play kind of all the things, or like sample all the things or whatever. But live, I think there's a real power to being in a band where you're really paying attention to each other. And when you do that, if I'm on stage with the bass, it's not particularly exciting. Even if I'm like practicing hours a day and do like a, hi, I'm Bill, I'm going to play bass. Like, that's not a thing you go to a concert for. You go to see a band because there's this magic when a bass player has guitar, vocals, drums, a whole band playing together. There's this thing that you need to do as a musician where you're not just like working with or collaborating with or all these like, leadershipy education things that we talk about, but that you're like genuinely relying on the people that you're with to make the sound. Like, as a bass player, I can't play music live without a band. Like, I can, but it's boring. But when I do play with the band, suddenly it's transformative. It's this whole other entity, and I love that can apply to anything I do in life. If I'm working on, we're going to plan this day around like an, AI and education fellowship, an all day kind of PD day, I'm going to approach it in the same way I'm going to approach these tracks. Be like, all right, like, I'm going to bring my thing, but I need the other people that are helping me plan this. Otherwise, it just won't be the thing that it would be. And there's a real power to that. There's a real magic to that. And I love that is kind of merging with the idea of just being able to take old tracks, come on in, right click on it and go like stem splitter. And then suddenly it breathes new life into this whole new track. It's super, super exciting. And if we actually talk about just kind of this first song, it's called Camden Road, and it is like all these worlds are coming together. We wrote it when we were living in Ventura full time, playing as a band, living in the same house as a band, which was not dramatic. Like, I feel like I should be like, and it was mayhem, and we should have had cameras everywhere. It wasn't. It was pretty chill. But the idea is that Brent wrote these lyrics in the original song around a few years after school, after college, after undergrad. He was in a wedding, so he drove up to San Jose, and kind of everybody got back together. It was like, oh, all the college buddies, people that I knew but wasn't particularly friends with, but he was. And so, he was in the wedding. He was a groomsman. They, hung out the night before. That night, they all hung out, obviously. And then, like, the next morning, they all went out to breakfast, the way I remember the story. And so it was that moment of like, wow, here we are all together. These memories are like people, but people exist. What are the lyrics? People that I know now live in memories. It's like a really beautiful thing of like, we used to live together and see each other every day in college, and now like I'm seeing you at a wedding or at like a big life event, and that's kind of it. Also, the song's Camden Road because that's where they met for breakfast. They were like at a Denny's or something the morning after the wedding, and all got together for kind of one last get together. And what's wild about that is that now where I live and where I work, I drive down Camden Road every day in the town of San Jose. Although, to be fair, it's Camden Avenue and it's the city of San Jose. But there's definitely, like, when you hear the song, there's definitely a ring to it if you say Camden Road, the town of San Jose. So just, little fact checking right there for you. But the idea that, even just then, when the song was written, like in 2003, talking about, friends that we went to college with in 2000, 2001, is when all this was taking place. It was like, wow, we used to hang out all the time like 3 years ago. And so now we fast forward way to 2024, and the idea that we can kind of reminisce, and that one lyric that really sticks out to me, the people that I know now live in memories, is just like a beautiful thing that this can like kind of come to life again in a really beautiful way. This is probably my favorite song out of the 9 that you're going to hear on this. We're going to start strong, and I guess we're going to slowly taper off on the excitement. Track 8 is also probably my second favorite, so you'll have to wait to get to that one. This is just like a really fast, energetic punk rock song that gets going, keeps going. Lots of really intricate breaks. It's one of those that I think really set the style of Rising Decline. Of like, if you had to like, what's one song that like defines what this band was, it would be the song Camden Road. Pretty complicated, like right away if you're a musician. So pause for a moment. You're going to hear this episode. You're hearing it right now. The very next podcast episode you're going to hear is going to be just the song. You can rewind that like 20 times, hear like the first 10 seconds. The music theory behind that is actually really complicated with the guitars playing. There's 2 guitars on the hard left and hard right that are playing the chords, and then I think 2 different guitars playing harmonies to that, and then the bass guitar is playing 2 notes at a time, playing harmonies to that. So it's really like a 4-part harmony for the first 10 seconds or so, and then Brent singing over it, which adds kind of a 5th harmony to it. And then there's a drum break, and then we're right into verse 1. So yeah, I dig this song. I think you're gonna like it too. Hopefully you're excited about this whole journey where we're going to hear the next 18 podcast episodes about each song. Moving on for tracks kind of 2 to 9, I'm going to dig more into kind of the music of it, and then always connect it with something with education or technology or educational technology. But in the meantime, this is episode 1, Stem Splitter and Logic. It's really freaking cool to go from just this one MP3 to all of these tracks is just like amazing. So if you're a musician that has some old tracks, throw them in the Logic, right click, Stem Splitter. You can remix the whole thing. So cool. And yeah, it's going to be a good time listening to these songs. And that is all for now. Go listen to the next episode of this podcast. You'll hear the song by itself, Camden Road. I'm not going to tease you during any of these and play like little snippets and samples or whatever. We're just going to talk and then listen without the music heading in and out and all that jazz. So with that, enjoy the next song, track 1 of Camden Road, the next podcast episode. And thanks for listening to this episode. My name is Bill Selak. This has been me talking.